Well, it appears that the lake flushing on Lake George, it's losing its efficacy. Or its efficacy. I think that's what that's called. It's not working as well as it used to. You see, they flush Lake George using the dam up at Ticonderoga. The funny thing about this story about the algae bloom on Lake George is that let's see, every newspaper in the North Country is covering it, and apparently Kristen Wild, the director of education for the Lake George Association, discovered it. And I'll absolutely guarantee you one thing, that's a stretch of the truth. Now, I don't really know Kristen Wild. I know she lives up on Assembly Point somewhere, and I grew up on Assembly Point, and I grew up on Dunham's Bay, and I grew up on Rockhurst and Cloverdale, and Pilot Knob, and Cannon Point, and Bolton Landing, and Hague, and Ticonderoga. I grew up all over Lake George, from Lake George Village to Harris Bay, where my parents built that great big marina called the Swamp. That great big marina that is known as the East Shores Harbor. Clifford and Anita Witham built the Harris Bay Marina, and the flushing, the massive releases of water using Dam 230 at the Poop Chute River, there north of Alexandria, the Alexandria Street Bridge, the pinhole in the bathtub, as they call it up there, is very famous. There's this fella, David Wick, and there's other fella, his name is Roger Smith. They sort of work for the New York State Department of Commerce, and they work for the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the governor of the state of New York, Andy Cuomo. This whole gang of folks in Basal Sagos need to understand something. The flushing of Lake George is very inventoried and chronicled. It's a historical fact. I have more court records and engineering records and inspection reports and media reports and every imaginable kind of witness you can think of that know for a fact that Lake George is flushed. David Wick likes to call it wintertime drawdown. Well, that's like flushing the toilet in the wintertime, right, David Wick? Those are big words you use, mister. Great big words, David Wick. Wintertime lake flushing. That's what it is, David Wick, and you can do all you want to do to try to call it drawdown, but that's the same thing that happens when you flush a urinal. You draw down the water. You flush it down the Poop Chute River over to Lake Champlain, and everybody knows Lake Champlain is massively poisoned. So for Miss Wild and this algae bloom on Lake George, you need to understand that the lake basin, the whole basin, is being massively poisoned and contaminated by 6,000 septic systems. Plus all the sewage from the treatment plants and all the other animal excrements and toxins and acid rain, the chemical rain from all the air pollution from the big paper mills and the cement plants, and all the other air pollution that Governor Cuomo and Basal Sagos license in the Adirondacks. You see, that pollution goes up in the air from the smokestacks, Miss Wild, and it cools off, and then it settles back down in the valleys and the lake basins. And then, of course, it rains, and all those chemicals that are in the air pollution wind up in the lakes, like Lake George. And then you've got this other amazing phenomena, Miss Wild. All those water-cooled marine engines, well, they're spewing recondensed chemicals from engine exhaust and oil and mercury and all sorts of arsenics and ketones and what's the other one they love to put in gasoline? Oh yeah, I can't think of the name of that chemical. It'll come to me here in a second. It's really nasty stuff. Toluene. They love to put toluene in gasoline. That's some wonderful stuff, Miss Wild. And it's all going into the Lake George soup of very unpristine water. Lake George, the fun for Lake George and this idea that Lake George has got pristine waters is, well, it's a fraud. Lake George hasn't had pristine waters in over a century. It's a mess up there. The only reason it has a remarkable ability to cleanse itself is when they flush the toilet. Tell them, David Wick. Come on, Roger Smith. When you do the wintertime environmental flush and drawdown, tell them how it dilutes the lake. Everybody, get out some pencil and paper and ask yourself, if you dump a bunch of water out of the toilet bowl to allow there to be a much more room for fresh water from the reservoir, the basin, are you diluting the toilet commode there and flushing it? It's just that simple, Miss Wild. They flush Lake George, and they've been doing it for a couple of centuries, since Isaac Kellogg and Joseph Weed and Alonzo Baldwin and that whole gang built the dams up there at Alexandria, up in Weedville. Everybody understands Weedville, Ticonderoga on the Poop Chute River. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to be funny here. I'm trying to point out this fact. The smartest lake in the world is being controlled. The smartest lake in the world is being manipulated by people from RPI University, the Darren Freshwater Institute, Christopher Novinsky. Come on down, pal. And if there's any doubt about what I'm saying here, there's a bunch of experts. Kathy Bozzoni knows I'm telling the truth, don't you, Kathy? And Ellen Apperson Brown, she darn sure understands that Irving Langmuir and John Apperson and Frank Liam Bruno. Hell, Frank Liam Bruno was with the Park Commission for 40 freaking years. You don't think he understood that the wintertime drawdown is flushing the lake? David Wick? Now, I can remember when the governor wanted to can you over a gallon of gasoline. 1 gallon of gasoline. He wanted to fire David Wick. Well, I think the governor needs to address the many, many hundreds of millions of gallons of leachate that are flowing out of the basin into the lake every year. Because you see, all those septic tanks, Miss Wild, are built on bedrock. Just like on Assembly Point. And I absolutely guarantee you, Miss Wild, Cleverdale, Rockhurst, Pilot Knob, all the way from, the Garrison, all the way down to Bay Road. The whole east side of the lake is nothing but bedrock. From Weowaka House to Paulus Fathers, all the way over to, Ronnie Williamson's old store. That's how long I've been around here, Miss Wild. And, I built for Alger Mason. I learned from Howard Mason, Miss Wild. Look that name up. And I worked for Dean Howland Sr., not Jr. I worked for the daddy. And Louis Carasone down at Northern Homes. And let's see, I worked for John Matthews. Everybody knows who John Matthews is. And if you got any questions about my history on the lake, get a hold of George and Marilyn Penzel over there at Boats by George. George will tell you. And Teddy Hands and the whole Hands clan, the Meads, the Masons, the McLaughlins, the Philos. Come on, this is the son of Swamp Fox, Miss Wild. Now to Tom West. Just ask Tom West. He's the lawyer for Fund for Lake George. Let's start talking about all that bedrock, Tom West. And, here's the interesting thing. Sherry Davies of Davies Real Estate. Sherry is your sister, Tom? We need to talk about the bedrock in the Lake George Basin and 6,000 septic tanks. That's what needs to be addressed, Governor Cuomo. And I'm going to guarantee you one thing. That flush flushing of Lake George in the wintertime with that stupid, inefficient, wholly inadequate Dam 230, Dam A, the upper privilege. This boy right here, oh, I understand it very well. I know the facts inside out and upside down and backwards. With my eyes closed, Miss Wild. So algae blooms on Lake George. Really, I am not shocked at all. The lake's full of sewage, Miss Wild. That lake's got pristine waters like I got perfect teeth. That lake's got pristine waters like I don't have skid marks in my boxers. How's that for Adirondack speak for you up there in the North Country? John Stroh and Dan Steck. Oh, God, Dan Steck. Come on, Bubba. Let's talk about it with that whole little gang there. What was his name? Oh, gosh, I'm having trouble here. David Little. There you go. Let's have a little chat about this with David Little and that bunch from Bartlett, Pontiff, Stewart, and Rhodes. And, you know, we can get the DeSantises. You see, I went to school with all them DeSantises there at Lake George Central on Canada Street. Now, to close this one out, I want to promise something to old Christopher Novinsky there. You know, Chris, I'm a Lake George warrior. I am a Lake George warrior and a Glens Falls Indian, and everybody in that country knows that I'm not making it up. So Christopher Novinsky, Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, and all your Chinese collaborators on the smartest lake in the world, well, you need to maybe figure out something other than flushing it to dilute it. Because dilution of the pollution is just dumping it in Lake Champlain. You're poisoning Lake Champlain, Miss Wild. That's what the Lake George Association, the Lake George Park Commission, the Lake George Land Conservancy, and Governor Cuomo and the whole gang, that's what you're doing. You're dumping all the sewage, the leachate, the polluted water from Lake George, you're dumping it into the Atlantic Ocean. Through Lake Champlain. You're poisoning Lake Champlain. And I think that's where we'll leave this one. Look up the poisoning of Lake Champlain, Miss Wild, and you'll understand that this old boy here, he really is a Lake George warrior from Harris Bay. Amazing. I grew up on Assembly Point, Miss Wild. Isn't that fascinating? Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll leave it right there. And as always, hasta la vista. God bless, and to my little bird friends up there that keep sending me intelligence on the lake, to those little birds, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. You're good people. God bless.